The dinghy. The dinghy is the smallest vessel in common use, and the one that makes every larger boat actually functional. Without it, any ship anchored beyond swimming distance from shore becomes an island. It measures under 16 feet, weighs almost nothing, and depending on configuration, either rows at 3 to 5 knots or, fitted with a small outboard of 2 to 10 horsepower, planes across harbor water at 15 to 20 knots. The hull is either rigid fiberglass, inflatable rubber-coated fabric, or a combination of both in the rigid inflatable hull configuration, now standard on rescue and Coast Guard operations worldwide. The inflatable version collapses into a bag small enough to store in a deck locker, which is the design breakthrough that made it universal. Jacques Cousteau standardized inflatable dinghies for ocean research in the 1950s, and the same logic that worked for marine biology works for every yacht, cargo vessel, and island community that needs a link between hull and shore. The dinghy's most extreme descendant is the inflatable life raft, which strips away even the outboard motor and leaves only the one thing that matters, something that floats and carries a person to safety. The sailboat. The sailboat is the machine that opened the world. Every landmass on Earth was first reached by a vessel moving on wind, and the physics that made that possible are unchanged. A sail does not push a boat the way a hand pushes a toy across a floor. It acts as a vertical wing, generating a pressure differential that pulls the hull forward even when the wind is coming from ahead. The keel, a weighted fin running below the waterline, prevents the wind from simply blowing the boat sideways instead of forward. Together, these two structures allow a sailboat to travel in almost any direction relative to the wind, the one exception being a direct headwind, where the sail stalls completely and leaves the boat motionless. Cruising sailboats average 5 to 12 knots. The outright speed record, set by the Vestas Sail Rocket 2, stands at 65.45 knots. The scale between those two numbers describes the full range of what sail-driven hulls can do. From a 40-foot family boat crossing an ocean on 8 knots of breeze to a carbon fiber machine barely touching the water surface. No fuel, no engine. The sailboat remains the only vessel capable of indefinite range on a finite planet. The center console boat. The center console is defined entirely by what it removes. There is no cabin. There is no bow seating. There is no structure between the helm and the water except open deck, and that absence is the point. By placing the steering console at the exact midpoint of the hull, the designer creates a continuous, walkable perimeter from bow to stern. A fisherman can move from one side to the other without stepping over anything, work the rail at any point, and fight a fish from any angle. Center consoles run from 18 feet up to models exceeding 60 feet, powered by multiple outboard engines capable of pushing the hull past 60 miles per hour in offshore conditions. The Boston Whaler Nauset 16, launched in 1961, established the format, and Boston Whaler famously cut one of its hulls in half to demonstrate it would still float, a demonstration that set the durability standard for the category. Coast Guard and law enforcement adopted the design for the same reasons sport fishermen did: unobstructed deck, high speed, and 360 degrees of visibility. Roughly 30% of saltwater sport fishing boats sold in the United States are center consoles. The catamaran. Where every other boat on this list has one hull, the catamaran has two. And that single structural decision changes almost everything about how the vessel behaves. A monohull stays upright because of a heavy keel below the waterline, pulling it back vertical. A catamaran stays upright because its two parallel hulls are spread far apart, typically a beam equal to 50% of the vessel's length, creating a footprint so wide that tipping it requires overcoming the weight of two separate hulls rather than one. The result is a platform that does not heel in normal sailing conditions, does not produce the rolling motion that causes seasickness, and generates 20% less drag than a monohull of equivalent length because each hull is narrower. Catamarans offer up to twice the interior living volume of a monohull of the same waterline length. The Polynesian outrigger canoe established the twin hull logic thousands of years before modern designers scaled it up into ocean-crossing charter yachts and carbon fiber America's Cup racers. The one structural vulnerability is permanent. If a catamaran capsizes, it will not right itself. A monohull can roll through 360 degrees and recover. An inverted catamaran floats upside down and stays there. The bow rider. The bow rider exists because someone decided the best seat on a fast boat was the front one. A standard motorboat of the mid-20th century placed all passengers behind the helm in a rear cockpit. The bow rider cut an opening into the bow deck and installed seating directly at the front of the hull, ahead of the windshield, where occupants face forward into the wind at speed. The hull runs 17 to 35 feet, carries 6 to 10 people, and planes at 30 to 50 miles per hour, using a deep V-shaped bottom that cuts through moderate chop without slamming. The design trades utility for sensation. There is no fishing equipment, no sleeping quarters, no galley. The bow rider is a day-use social platform optimized for the experience of speed on calm water. Its structural weakness is the open bow itself. In steep waves, that forward seating area fills with water the way a bucket fills when submerged. The design belongs on lakes, calm bays, and sheltered coastlines. It is the most common entry point into recreational powerboating and the primary driver of the freshwater marina economy across North America. The jet boat. Every other motorized boat on this list moves through the water using a propeller mounted below the hull. The jet boat has no propeller. It draws water in through a grate in the hull floor, accelerates it through an internal impeller, and fires it out of a steerable nozzle at the stern. Thrust goes wherever the nozzle points. The practical consequence is a boat with nothing exposed below the hull, capable of operating in water shallow enough to walk through, and able to spin 360 degrees at speed without a conventional turning radius. Recreational jet boats run 19 to 24 feet and exceed 50 miles per hour. The design's limitation is the direct connection between thrust and steering. Cut the engine and the jet boat loses all directional control because there is no rudder and no propeller wash to redirect. A conventional boat losing power can still be steered at low speed. A jet boat without engine power goes wherever physics takes it. New operators encounter this as an emergency, the first time they instinctively cut the throttle to avoid an obstacle. The absence of underwater moving parts makes jet boats the standard platform for flood rescue operations, where submerged debris destroys conventional propellers within minutes. The fish and ski boat. The fish and ski boat is the product of a specific domestic negotiation that plays out on boat dealership lots every spring. One member of a household wants to fish, another wants to water ski. The fish and ski resolves this by building both boats into one hull, typically 18 to 22 feet long, with modular components that convert the layout in under a minute. Bow seats flip up to reveal flat casting platforms. A ski tow pylon folds down from the floor. Rod holders and live wells share space with upholstered seating and a boarding ladder. The hull balances the low speed stability needed to hold position while fishing against the 30 to 40 miles per hour needed to pull a skier on a rope. It achieves neither as well as a dedicated bass boat achieves fishing or a dedicated ski boat achieves towing. That compromise is the defining tension of the category, and also its commercial logic. During economic contractions, the fish and ski reliably outsells both specialist alternatives because it justifies itself to two different users simultaneously. The format was established in 1983 and has remained structurally unchanged because the underlying domestic problem it solves has not changed either. The deck boat. A standard powerboat hull narrows to a point at the bow, which produces good hydrodynamics and a poor return on interior square footage. The deck boat solves this by carrying the full beam of the hull all the way forward, producing a rectangular deck that uses the bow as additional passenger space, rather than wasting it as a structural necessity. The hull runs 18 to 28 feet, carries 8 to 12 passengers, and planes at 30 to 45 miles per hour using a flared V-bottom that maintains the planing capability of a performance hull while supporting the wide deck above it. Many deck boats include side entry boarding gates, similar to pontoon boats, which makes boarding easier for children, elderly passengers, and dogs. The penalty for the wide, flat bow appears in rough water. When a deck boat meets steep waves at speed, the flat forward surface strikes each wave with a sharp, forceful impact that a pointed bow would slice through instead. The deck boat is a fair weather vessel, optimized for maximum people on the water on a calm day, and it delivers that specific promise more efficiently than almost any comparable hull design. The cabin cruiser. The cabin cruiser is a motorboat that decided it was also a home. Below the main deck, inside the hull, a cabin cruiser contains sleeping berths, a galley with a stove and refrigerator, a head with a toilet, and enough storage for a week away from a marina. The hull runs 25 to 45 feet. Above 45 feet, the vessel crosses into yacht classification. Engines push most cabin cruisers efficiently at 20 to 25 knots, with higher-powered models reaching 40 knots. The format emerged from post-World War II prosperity in the United States, when the two-day weekend became standard and families with enough income wanted a vessel that could sustain 48 hours away from shore. Chris Kraft and Sea Ray built the category into an industry. The maintenance economics are punishing. Every domestic appliance aboard is a marine-grade version of its land equivalent, operating in a salt, moisture, and vibration environment that degrades components faster than any household setting. Carbon monoxide accumulation in enclosed cabins is the primary safety hazard, requiring dedicated detectors and strict ventilation protocols. What the cabin cruiser offers in exchange for that overhead is genuine autonomy, the ability to leave a marina with food, fuel, and beds aboard, and not return until the trip is finished. The houseboat. The houseboat is where the logic of the cabin cruiser reaches its conclusion. The cabin cruiser compromises some living space for speed and hull performance. The houseboat makes no such compromise. It uses a flat barge style or pontoon style hull to maximize interior volume, carries a full-size kitchen, multiple bedrooms, full bathrooms, outdoor decks, and in some configurations, hot tubs and garages for personal watercraft. Speed is not a design consideration. Most houseboats travel at 5 to 8 miles per hour. Many have no engines at all and are permanently moored. The largest production models in North America exceed 5,600 square feet of living space. The legal category of the houseboat has been argued to the United States Supreme Court. The 2013 Lozman case forced a ruling on whether a houseboat is a vessel governed by maritime law or a dwelling governed by property law. The court established the reasonable observer test, holding that a structure is not a vessel if a reasonable observer would not consider it designed to carry people or cargo across water. The houseboat sits at the outer edge of what the word boat can mean, a structure that floats and sometimes moves, built entirely around the decision to live on water rather than simply travel across it.